The Strait of Hormuz um, is really the sovereign territorial waters of Iran and Oman under international law. At its narrowest point, it's only 21 nautical miles wide, and nations claim 12 nautical miles of territorial sea from their coasts. It's considered an international waterway, and it's been treated as such. But this is where the president is trying to put pressure on Oman to play along with whatever the United States comes up with, because we know that they've been discussing Iran and Oman joint control. Upbound would be controlled by Oman, downbound would be controlled by Iran, and if they wanted to slap tolls, each country could. So the president clearly doesn't want that to happen. But international law does not permit the United States to acquire foreign territory through a presidential decree, certainly not through a social media post. Now, also under the Constitution, acquiring or incorporating new territories requires the formal congressional approval, a treaty, a legislative act. Under the Constitution, the president cannot unilaterally do this. So it's probably just rhetorical showmanship. But again, it's the President of the United States making the declaration. Now, there's another thing to take into consideration, and how much consideration you want to give it depends on your interpretation of the veracity of a former member of Congress, and I'm referring to Marjorie Taylor Greene. He is claiming in a post on X that the Trump administration is actively considering a nuclear strike against Iran. And I'll tell you in a second why I bring this up in conjunction with today's discussion. She published that on X, stating she was, quote, not speculating, but rather that she knows that high-level discussions are underway to, quote, lower the nuclear threshold. Now, the problem with this is it's totally unverified. There is no context, there's no substantiation. We also know that since leaving office, Greene, who was a big ally of the president, has aligned with anti-war conservative figures to really very strongly oppose U.S. military operations in Iran. So we have to take what she says with, I guess, as the saying goes, a grain of salt. But who knows? Maybe as a former congresswoman, she has the context in the administration, and maybe she is being told this, and maybe she believes it, and maybe it's true. I don't know. So the reason I bring it up is if you think there would be a crisis if the president ordered the bombing of Oman, imagine this. It would, first of all, the way it works is a presidential order to launch a nuclear weapon as a first strike. I think it's different if, like the doomsday-area movies, Russia launches nuclear weapons towards the United States. He doesn't have to go through a congressional approval. He just, turns the key and pushes the button, basically. But a first strike against a nation that's not firing nuclear weapons at us, that proposal would trigger the highest level of military and legal scrutiny in the chain of command. Yes, in general, the military is bound to the concept of civilian control, but a nuclear order is different. Vastly different from a conventional bombing. So, in all likelihood, the Pentagon folks would not just balk, as I used that term earlier. There would be a highly formalized process to determine if the order is legally valid. So it's not an absolute order as others might be. And I'm not going to get into the details, but there are 4 pillars of nuclear legality that have to be considered. And as a matter of fact, if the first strike order fails, goes for test, they are legally required to refuse it. So I don't want to get into a lot of detail into that. It's totally unverified, but there's a parallel to what our discussion is today, and that's why I mention it. So is this threat to bomb Oman a step too far? Well, I guess it depends on who you're asking. The president's detractors are already on the record calling it a dangerous and destabilizing statement on the part of the president. They point that Oman has been a loyal and an historic partner to the United States. But the White House is countering by saying that it's a necessary display of strength to break a deadlock following the expiration of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire. Okay, let's not lose sight of the fact that the threat was delivered informally. It was on True Social, but still, it is a threat. And it could be considered by some as a step too far. And as a result of this, there are already moves in Congress to try to block the potentiality. So some members of Congress are, at least on the surface, taking this seriously. Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat of Virginia, says he's introducing a specific Oman War Powers resolution which would legally bar the executive branch from funding or executing unauthorized military strikes against Oman. Now, in the past, these war powers resolutions have been voted on in Congress strictly along partisan lines, but there are some indications that there might be some bipartisan support for such a resolution. Where does Congress have control? Well, always the power of the purse. So they could preemptively insert funding prohibitions into defense spending bills that explicitly prohibit federal funds from being used for offensive operations against Oman, absent a declaration of war. And within the military, there are some braking systems, and there are potential legal braking systems as well. And there would probably be some back channeling diplomatically to try to put an end to this absurd idea. There's Gary's bias on it, that the United States might attack an ally that has been trying to help us negotiate an end to the conflict in Iran. So, with that, the question is the president going too far here? Marshall, why are you not on the stage? Let me fix that. That's really weird. I don't know why that happened. Okay, so we'll start with Scott, and presuming Marshall makes it to the stage, followed by Marshall. Scott.
Yeah, this is strange. Yeah, this is very strange. What makes it particularly strange is they're not. This is a long-term strategic partner that has in the past served as an intermediary between Washington and Tehran. look, I mean, they're trying to work out an arrangement. I understand with Iran around commercial shipping through the Strait. I don't know why you would threaten to bomb an ally, right? I mean, is the strategic rationale behind this that the administration doesn't want an Iran, Oman, arrangement that strengthens Iranian influence over the Strait? I mean, I don't. I mean, aren't we undermining the mediator that we've relied upon in the past to deal with Iran? I mean, this is just a very, this is very strange. This is threatening to casually bomb an ally is crazy, right? I mean, it's just crazy, right? I mean, this is wild. Now, as you said, Gary, it's informal. I don't know. It was on the phone. I don't know. This is bizarre. I mean, that's all I have to say. This is absolutely
You fucking faggots kick me.
Well, you know, this is just another indication, in my opinion, and this is just based on observation when I say it's my opinion, of the president's disdain for the State Department diplomacy. You know, traditionally, issues that are discussed behind closed doors between diplomats, where you can have candid conversations, but come out saying that, you know, that they had that they had a vibrant discussion that sends a signal that it was maybe contentious, but they don't go into the details of it. It gives everybody involved a degree of wiggle room when you follow the diplomacy. You don't make public pronouncements in the past that you then feel compelled to live up to, or maybe you don't live up to it and you look stupid. So if you were to threaten Oman diplomat to diplomat behind closed doors, you could always back away from it and save face, and you don't have it's not public facing. So the rest of the world doesn't see, we have no idea what goes on in these negotiations and negotiations in the past. What was really said between the United States and allies and the United States and adversaries. I mean, there have been times when the United States has put pressure on their allies, even as far back as Eisenhower, I believe. There was a dispute over the control of the Suez Canal, and he threatened to withdraw military assistance to some of our allies, but that wasn't, you know, in a public pronouncement, and that was a threat to withdraw, not a threat to attack. I see nowhere, and Marshall could correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I try to find in history an example of a president of the United States threatening to bomb an ally ever before, or before the advent of the bombs, attack an ally. I can't find it. It may be there, but I've never heard of it. So this is really, at the very least, atypical. And Scott, I'm wondering how it further undermines the confidence of our allies in the United States. I mean, we've already withdrawn support from NATO. I understand the reasons why, in the president's mind, we have. But it's almost like we're agreeing with those who would come to the stage and say, hey, you guys, just, you know, recognize the American empire is crumbling. You no longer have the do anything, and here's another example of that, because the president is acting like he's a cornered animal and attacking even his allies. Now, I don't know if that's a fair analogy, but that's what comes to mind. Me, Scott, it just seems like diplomacy is gone. It's out the window. It may not be totally gone, but it certainly has been eroded under this administration.
Yeah, Gary, that's an understatement. I mean, of course it has. I mean, look, this is one of those things where this is not ideological, right, or partisan. I don't think. I think this is just personality, right? This is Trump's personality. Aside from, again, his foreign policy instincts and whether they're isolationist or now interventionist. I mean, now they seem at this moment interventionist, contrary to what I think he promised. A lot of his supporters, right, were supportive of his candidacy because you remember, didn't he say if we elect Kamala, we'll be in war with Iran? I mean, this is, yeah. I don't know how you trust in Trump, but again, I think it would be interesting for one of his supporters to. I hope we have a supporter on the stage that can tell us what the positive gloss on this is. Maybe this is his fly by the seat of his pants unpredictability that keeps people on their toes or something. I don't know, Gary. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words, so I'll just,
Well, God forbid he were to actually make such an order and put the military in the terrible spot of trying to determine whether that's a lawful order or an unlawful order. It's just not fair, in my opinion, to the career military commanders to give them an order to attack an ally. It just, where does that put them? They would, I just gave a little overview based on some research that I did. I'm no expert. I did accurately quote the military code, but certainly that's of the code. I don't have a full understanding of what all that means. I know what I just read. To me, it's just putting them in an untenable situation. What if, since he's willing to suggest attacking Oman, what if he just decides we're going to take Canada as the 51st state? What if he decides that by force? What would the Pentagon do then? I don't think there's any question, but they would not follow through on that order. But I don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility, not probability, based on what he's saying about Oman and what he has said in the past about Canada. These comments, he may not mean them in the literal sense. They certainly have consequences. And as you and I have both said many times before, I love quoting Barack Obama on this. Don't tell me words don't matter. They certainly do. Thank you, Scott. We'll go to Marshall, followed by Agent.
I just can't believe he threatened to bomb our ally again. Didn't he do this like a couple months ago?
I don't recall him. When did he do that?
Because let me tell you something, Jerry.
You gotta wait your turn, buddy. Sorry. Go ahead, Marshall.
I was saying he threatened to bomb Oman a couple of months ago. Like
he did.
We talked about it on the show.
I don't remember us talking about it. Maybe I'm getting so old that my memory banks are failing me. But go ahead.
Well, he said it once before as a joke. I don't know if he said it as a joke this time, but he said it once before. So I don't know what to make of it, Gary. It just seems like not a very good thing to do to threaten to bomb your ally. even if you're mad at them because they won't help you.
You're absolutely right. I'm looking it up now. I missed this. If we discussed it on stage, I don't recall it. That occurred on May 27th during a White House cabinet meeting. A reporter asked Trump if his administration would accept a short-term deal allowing Iran and Oman to oversee shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. And the president responded aggressively, stating, quote, "Nobody is going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, or we will have to blow them up." So there were those who initially wondered if the president had simply misspoken and meant to say Iran, but the State Department later confirmed the remarks by publishing an official transcript explicitly naming Oman. I don't know what the hell's going on here with this president. I guess this, as I said earlier, is his form, Marshal, of diplomacy. We'll get people to do things by threatening to do things to them. That's what I think is going on here. He's the diplomat in chief. Just like he said during his first administration, that he knows more about the military than the Pentagon does. And he didn't say the Pentagon. I think he said the leaders of the Pentagon are. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact quote, but I think you recall to which I refer. Maybe he thinks that he's like the diplomat in chief, and we can't expect our Foreign Services Corps to deliver messages in a manner in which we can have candid discussions without scaring the bejeebers out of people and causing them to look at the United States and say, what the hell is going on? It's just mind-boggling to me, frankly. But you're right. Thank you for bringing that up. I had forgotten it.
Yeah, so it makes it twice. It makes it 2 times that he's threatened to bomb an ally.
The same ally.
Yep.
I mean, what the hell is going on here? And yet, as we discussed yesterday, he's pulling back on the pressure on North Korea. I mean, I just don't get it. Not that I'm, looking for us to go to war with North Korea, but I think, as we discussed yesterday, Reagan had it right about using the military as a deterrence. And by the way, the threat of military action can sometimes be more effective than actual military action. And military action can be effective if it's successful, but we haven't been very successful of late. So that makes the future threats of military action less of a deterrence. Agent followed by Anson. Agent, are you with us?
Hey, Gary.
Yeah, we can hear you now. We hear you now.
Yeah, I saw the headline. It's pretty hard to, I've said before, this is someone you take seriously, but not literally. And again, he says stuff. It sounds like he was exasperated when he said it. Although, people should have a little bit of, well, maybe he might do something. Look, what does Kelsey say is like the chances that this will happen, right? What does Polly Market say? I think that's where, if people want to know what the money says is more likely, and how much did it go up as far as the likelihood after his latest statement. I mean, we can get all worked up about what he said, but what does the money think people willing to actually bet on the outcome? I mean, that tells you how much more likely this thing actually is. I think it's I haven't looked it up. I should have looked it up, but I suspect the chances are very low, but I think he's making a point. He's doing negotiation and he's saying, look, you got to get on board. Sometimes people are your friends, but they undermine you, right? Or they sabotage you in some way. And I think he's really trying to call out a friend at this point, if you want to frame it that way, and say, look, you're undermining us. This is extremely expensive for us. The stakes are high. And if you're going to continue doing these side deals, that is going to make Iran then less likely to do a direct deal with, you want to negotiate as a united front. So I think that's what this is about. Now, if they really undermine us, maybe if they cross some kind of red line somehow and they get bombed. I don't know. I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'm just saying, just because his words literally said that, nobody should take this man literally. Anyway, I think I made my point. Thank you.
Except that he's the president of the United States. And there are consequences to these kinds of things. So to use your analogy, well, you didn't actually describe it as an analogy, but you used the term friend. So if you and I are friends and we enter into some kind of a business arrangement, and it seems to me that you are taking advantage of the agreement so that it's not mutually beneficial, but the thumb is on the scale in your behalf, and I feel like I've been betrayed by you. I might have strong words with you and say, Agent, what the hell do you think you're doing here? And we may have, we might get into a shouting match, but I don't know that I would threaten. And I don't know that you would, if the shoe were on the other foot, to beat the crap out of me or to shoot me, because I think shooting me would be a greater analogy than beating the crap out of, because bombing people die. So this is a proper way of expressing one's frustration. And why do you have to express the frustration to the world on Truth Social? If you're an adult, you pick up the phone and you call the head of the government in Oman, who I don't know whether they call that person a sheikh or what, but you call the head of the government in Oman and you say, hey, come on. Hey, man. That's what Biden would do. He'd go, hey, man, what are you doing? I mean, wouldn't that be the adult way of handling this? I mean, the whole world is watching this, and it just adds to the global disdain for the United States right now.
I hear you, Gary. I mean, part of it's just a generation or a stylistic thing. I'm sorry that people do, tweets are the medium didn't exist when we were young. This medium certainly didn't exist when the Constitution was written. And think about how formal those documents are. You can go and view those documents today and see how people used to communicate important messages, and how nations would communicate, how leaders of nations would communicate. And technology and social norms have changed, and I know that this is difficult. And personality, certain personality, populism exists, demagoguery, that's an inevitable consequence of a representative or democratic style system. Okay, if you let any person in your society vote just for existing, you're going to get some sort of the lowest common denominator, which is what we have. And that's what we get. If you want a different system, if you want a system where only elites following very highly established ceremonies and norms, and communication happens this way, marriages happen this way, you're asking for a completely different government, essentially, system, way of life, everything. This is what we get. If you say you like democracy, you should be thrilled at the fact that you have a popularly elected president who is sending social media messages to other nations. Thank you, I'm done.
You know, Canada is a democracy. It's a parliamentary system, not a republic, but it is a democracy, duly elected. They are culturally very similar to the United States. I imagine a lot of people are expressing their personal biases against other people. Their personal affronts are being played out for everybody to see. That's the culture to which you refer. You could go to the social media sites and see it. Gosh, I saw a guy I know who's pissed off at the way his kid's been treated by a teacher. I think that's, don't know whether it's, I think it's high school. And he's so pissed off at that teacher, he goes onto social media to say what a piece of crap teacher is. And okay, that happens, and that happens in Canada too, but you don't see the Prime Minister of Canada making pronouncements like the President of the United States makes on social media that have global ramifications. He's measured in his tone. He does say some strong words in response to some of the things, especially the tariffs that have been imposed by the president and the threat to make Canada the 51st state. As well he should. He's representing Canada. He's not representing the United States. But you don't see any other leader of a democracy in this manner. And the president's 80 years old, for God's sakes. How many 80-year-old people do you know who are doing things like this? I guess age does not necessarily translate into maturity. I'm an example, maybe. Maybe age doesn't. I may be example number one. Thank you, Agent. We'll go to Anson, who I'm sure will have a lot of insight and correct everything I said that was wrong about the Military Code of Justice, followed by Brent Anson.
Well, I'm certainly not aware of any domestic statutory law, one way or the other, that authorizes or restricts the president in the use of nuclear weapons. So I went to ChatGPT for what it's worth. No statute that specifically requires congressional approval before a president orders the first use of nuclear weapons. There is no statute, okay? There should be, but there's not. Should be, in my view. You mentioned the 4 pillars, which I've never heard of, but ChatGPT offers what it calls important legal constraints. 1, the order must be lawful. Well, we've talked about how you determine that. 2, military necessity. There must be a legitimate military objective. Well, we can talk about that. Distinction. Attacks must distinguish military targets from civilians. Huh. Anytime you drop a nuclear weapon, you're not distinguishing very much between military targets and civilians. And finally, proportionality. Expected civilian harm cannot be excessive related to the anticipated military strategy.
Yeah, those are the 4 pillars. That's exactly the 4 pillars.
But they have absolutely no statutory limitations. That is the key point. And we can argue about all those points, but I believe there should be statutory required for a first strike. Okay, not for a bolt out of the blue. Here comes 1,000 missiles headed, and the president has to decide whether to respond or not. That's a whole different ball of wax. Now, let me talk about uh, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Serious discussions, obviously, that Trump would not participate in, because I don't think he's ever demonstrated he can have a serious discussion about anything. But serious discussions related to the use of nuclear weapons, strategic, tactical, whatever, usually goes on in the Pentagon within the Joint Staff. Marjorie Taylor Greene says she absolutely knows that such discussions have taken place. Well, of course, somebody probably on the Joint Staff said somebody was talking about the ins and outs and the what ifs and so forth of the use of tactical nukes. Okay? That's not meaning that we're getting ready to launch. That just means the Joint Staff is doing a very difficult but important job. So I give her absolutely no credibility, because there's no way she can be certain. What I suspect is some general or admiral said, "Hey, Marjorie, a bunch of us were sitting around and talking about whether to nuke Tehran," which, all that's bullshit. The Where am I going? Oh, knowing a bit, and on the deck plates, so to speak, knowing that evaluating the legality of an order, particularly, let's just restrict it to the use of, say, a first strike launch of a tactical nuclear weapon. How do the people outside of Washington know whether the four constraints have been when I was going to sea on submarines, and of course that was 40 years ago, we didn't get newspapers. We weren't told what was going on. We had, we were not aware of current events. And if bing, 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 the teletype started clicking, and it was related to the use of nuclear weapons, that kicked in. Two-man control, two officers go in. They both have to carry one side of the card to the other. They both have to deliver it. Two-man control, I mean, the whole gamut of actually executing the launch. There's no way in hell those guys on a submarine have the ability to decide, is the order legal or not. There was a great movie that I enjoyed. Many others probably didn't understand it. It was called Crimson Tide, and Gene Hackman and a very young Denzel Washington. Gene Hackman was the skipper of an SSBN, a nuclear submarine carrying nuclear ballistic missiles. Gene Hackman was Denzel Washington was the XO, and it almost was a movie that right out of the Caine Mutiny, where the XO, the skipper, for various reasons, was convinced that a nuclear strike was needed, and that he ordered the crew to start the process of conducting the nuclear strike. And Denzel Washington, basically, they had a mutiny, and they didn't let him do it. That was, again, the movie Crimson Tide. It's the reverse, where how about if Denzel Washington is the XO today, and a legitimate order, meaning it meets the requirements of all the codes and security and all that. When I say legitimate, It means it's absolutely correctly following the protocol. Prepare for and actually launch a nuclear weapon from down in the field or on a submarine or on a bomber or whatever you want to call it. Where the skipper got a message like that and it orders the initiation of the process, and Denzel Washington, as the XO, has a mutiny because he believes the order is not lawful. That ought to be a great movie. But let me close with all this. This is Trump derangement syndrome that is accurate. And I believe that just as there was some serious discussion about the use of the 25th Amendment during the last year or so of Biden's presidency, was he mentally competent and able to execute the office? And there was some reasonable discussion, okay? Obviously, it didn't happen. We ought to be having those kind of reasonable discussions today about Trump. He is so far out of bounds and so far away from the norms of the way the United States has been conducting world affairs since World War II that somebody, the cabinet and the Congress should be seriously considering the use of the 25th Amendment. That's all I got.
Thank you, Hanson. So, with regard to those four pillars and why I said that they must be met, I got this from the Military Law Center. Now, it sounds like an official body. It's not. It's a private civilian law firm founded by a retired Marine Corps lieutenant colonel specializing in defending military service members facing court martials, Article 15, administrative separations, so forth. And according to that, through a combination of international, according to the Military Law Center, that is, through a combination of international treaties ratified by the Senate, U.S. military regulations, and federal statutory criminal codes, the four pillars of the law of armed conflict must be met. It's a legally binding authority, according to this Military Law Center, for what it's worth. Might be worth some further research.
But come on, Gary. That's like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying she absolutely knows that there are serious discussions about launching a tactical nuke against Iran. That's coming from, it's not even coming from a government organization. It's coming from lawyers, it sounds like, which is kind of scary. And again, the man in the field, the sailors and officers, mid-level officers, even the commanding officers, when that teletype starts clicking, are they going to go down through that checklist and make individual judgments as to the details of those four pillars? No, those four pillars are something that should be debated in Congress, and then if Congress so desires, they should put it in writing in legal statutory law, federal law. That's when you take any doubt out of the hands of people that are just trying to do their job and follow orders. You take any doubt out of their hands because Congress has passed laws, not norms, not constraints, not whatever you want to call it. Like I led off with, Gary, absolutely there ought to be federal law that says the president must have congressional authority to launch a first strike. Now, can you imagine that debate? But that is a statute that is desperately needed, particularly when you've got Trump with his finger near the trigger. But the rest of that stuff is, it's like how much authority does everybody's opinion that we're banning them out in this room have? I mean, come on. If I was a skipper of a submarine and somebody gave me those 4 constraints, I wouldn't have the slightest idea what the hell to do with them, because it would just be my opinion, my reading, my evaluation as a CO, which you don't want to have when you're dealing with nuclear weapons.
So I agree with all that, but there's a distinction between the practicality and the legality. And right now, as best as I can suss out, in spite of the fact that it's not been codified into one obvious, and I agree with you, it ought to be law that delineates how these things should be, excuse me, handled. If you look at the Geneva Conventions, they require strict adherence to distinction and humanity, 2 of the pillars. The Hague Conventions restricts the methods and means of warfare. There's statutory codification in federal law. I'm reading this, obviously, from